Good morning. The Economic Society of the Shri Ram College of Commerce warm all of you to GuruQ presents Shri Ram Economic Summit, Asia's largest economics festival. We would like to thank our digital media partner Bloomberg Quint. We are adding new perspectives to contemporary issues and broadening the horizons of discussions in the public discourse. The two-day event has been extremely enriching so far, and it has just gotten bigger, better, bolder with our next speaker, one of our country's most esteemed civil servants and the incumbent Defense Secretary of India, Dr. Ajay Kumar. Sir's illustrious career includes having served many roles across the central government and the of Kerala, including Principal Secretary to the Government of Kerala, Information Technology Department, Joint Secretary to the Government of India, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, and the Director General of the NIC. Sir takes interest in the spheres of policy, technology, and the digital economy, and has made notable contributions in arenas of electronics manufacturing, mobile phones manufacturing, and initiatives like the Digital India and MyGov. In his current portfolio, Sir is continuous and concrete efforts to attract the participation of the private sector, including startups in the defense space, so become self-reliant, Atmanirbhar in this crucial aspect. Lastly, Sir's distinctive career path is extremely eye-catching. He is an engineer, an IS officer, a PhD holder in business administration, and also holds a master in applied economics. Sir, you give every young Indian ever a run for their money. We are extremely grateful to you for accepting our invitation, and we are eager to listen and gain insights from you. To interview Sir, we have a renowned journalist from the Bloomberg Quint, Mr. Sajid Keshav Mangat. Sir is the national news editor at the Bloomberg Quint. He covers and tracks conglomerates like the Tatas and the Birlas, and sectors like defense, cement, FMCG, oil and gas. Besides also tracking financial market regulators like SEBI, IDA, and PFRDA. He is also the recipient of the prestigious Donald T. Sheehan International Scholarship to attend the Wharton Seminars for Business Journalists. Thank you, Sajid sir. Now, it is my privilege to invite Dr. Ajay Kumar to make his opening remarks.
Hi, Parth. First of all, I must thank you for having invited me for this. It's an honor and a privilege to talk to a group of the best in the country, economic students. And I remember at my IIT Kanpur, and we used to have a contingent, of course, long time back, from SRCC for a cultural festival, and the friendly competition that we used to have between IIT Kanpur and SRCC during those cultural festival days still lingers in my mind. What I just wanted to say, since you mentioned about Atmanirbhar Bharat, I would like to point out some very basic facts with respect to defense industry, where we are now trying to become Atmanirbhar. So this is an opportunity, economic opportunity, which we have not given that much of importance in the past. And why this is very important is, apart from being an economic opportunity, which I will briefly talk about, it also has tremendous strategic impact. Today, defense and aerospace industry, which are closely interlinked, of the tune of nearly $400 to $500 billion. And the fact is that India's contribution to global share is about 1 to 2%, which is quite negligible. The second part of it is that this industry, wherever it has been able to, there are only very few countries which today dominate this industry. In fact, it's very interesting that the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council dominate this. Nearly 75% of global defense industry is actually dominated by these 5 members of Security Council, and those who are, in some way responsible for creating peace in the country. We in India somehow have in the past always looked at defense industry as catering to our own requirement, whereas the world over, defense industry has grown because majority of the companies and the countries who are defense producers are actually exporting large fraction of the share which they produce. So one of the important changes that we had to make was with respect to moving away from this inward looking approach with respect to defense industry and enabling our industry to actually look at the global market. And I must say this very briefly again, that between 2016-17 and 2019-20, we saw nearly 800% growth. Albeit the growth is on a very small base because we really didn't have too much of growth, but there was significant growth in this regard. The second point I would like to mention is in this regard is that we have ever since independence focused on developing defense industry within the public sector. So we had big public sector undertakings who have done very well with the role that has been given, but it has not enabled the dynamism of the private sector to come in this industry. This is something again which we have tried to change over the last few years, and today we are seeing the dynamism of, while we continue to support the public sector in a big way, we are today seeing dynamism of the private sector also entering much more. And I would like to elaborate on this as we go forward. The third thing, which the major shift I think I would like to mention is the shift from focus on being a producer, a manufacturer based on transfer of technology to actually developing our own technology. We have over the years, we have produced a number of aircraft. We have produced over 500 aircraft in the country, but it is only with LCA that the first Indian indigenized aircraft was produced. We have produced thousands of tanks, but the fact is, when we produced T-72 tank, we got technology for T-72. A couple of decades later, when we produced T-90 tanks, we got technology for T-92. So we were focusing more as production centers rather than developers of technology. And it is obvious, and it is not very difficult to see that if we are dependent on technology to some other country, even if we have big production facilities within the country, at the time of crisis, at the time when we may need most, we may still be dependent on some country to continue providing the licensing rights so that we can produce. It also puts a huge constraint on our ability to export. Again, the technology holder dictates whether we can actually export this country. So the third focus which we are doing is to move from a regime of technology transfer-led production to our own indigenous technology. Last point which I would like to make in my opening comments is to do this. Today, we are actually not only talking of private sector, but startups in a big way. And we, in 2018, for the first time, introduced startups in defense sectors. And all I want to say at this stage is the response that has been received for startups has been absolutely amazing. What used to take, what kind of technologies used to be developed in years is now being developed in months. What used to take hundreds of crores is happening not in tens of crores, but in unit crores, in less than 10 crores. And if we were able to do 10 projects at a time, given the way we used to do this, today we are able to do 100 different technologies with startups joining this effort. So I think these are the four major aspects at this stage, which I would like to mention as part of our efforts to develop defense to play a bigger role because it has economic implications, because of the sheer size of the defense aerospace industry in the world, and also for huge strategic implications which it has for India as a country if we have our own defense industry. I don't know how much time I can go on speaking about it, but I would be happy to take questions from Sajid ji, because I'm sure he would have a lot of questions for me to answer.
Definitely, sir. Thank you very much for your words. With this, I request Sajid sir to take over.
Thank you, Hardik.
Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Hardik. Thank you, Dr. Kumar, for joining us today. You almost stole the thunder from my questions by addressing the Atmanirbhar uh, thing. But my first question to you is that uh, if you look at the Indian defense manufacturing sector as a whole, uh, what is the extent of Atmanirbhar today we are actually? I mean, if you can quantify it, and where are we looking to head, maybe say in the next 5 to 10 years? The Indian private sector defense industry is at least 2 decades old, and we haven't seen much movement in terms of scale from them. So, where are we in terms of Atmanirbhar? I know the defense PSUs are very strong, but the private sector has not been able to grow at the same pace as the defense PSUs.
So yeah, thank you for this question, because I agree with you that defense PSUs are very strong. Today, the defense PSUs are producing about 75,000 crores worth of uh, defense equipment every year, which is in one way nearly about 2/3 of what we procure in the country in volume. That could be one way of assessing what is the level of Atmanirbhar. But I think the better way to assess would be that within the 75,000 crores, the value addition which is happening domestically, varies for different products, but on a very gross level, we could say this value addition varies between 50 to 60%, which means half of this 75,000 crores is actually dependent on imports. The third thing is, I think, where we need to be even more cognizant of this is that some of the critical technologies that we continue to be dependent on. And I would there are at a system level, at a subsystem level, you can talk of several such technologies which we continue to depend on outside. But I would, at a broad level, at a technology level, I would like to mention three major areas where I think there has been distinct gap between where our capability as a country exists and where the world has moved. And there is no doubt in the fact that till about recent times, and I'm going to talk about that briefly, the defense used to determine the leading edge of technology in most aspects. So in that era, the three major technology areas where we have been lagging behind, one is in the area of engines. Today, the way the engine technology, and I am specifically for aero engines, but also in other engine technologies which are required for defense purposes, which are stronger, more powerful, greater thrust, lighter in weight, we are not having that capability in the country. The second area where we do not have the capabilities in terms of a semiconductor foundry, which means is that electronic chips which are used whether in defense or in other areas continue to be imported. And the third significant area is the dependence or the requirements in materials which we have. Having said that, I want to mention why things, this is where we were, till a few years back. But what has changed is that in the last 10 years, as digital technologies have started to become the dominant influence on all, across all walks of life, and so is the case in defense equipment as well, India's opportunity to bridge this gap and to leapfrog has suddenly increased. And that is where, when I talked about startups a little earlier, today, things like artificial intelligence, unmanned platforms, network-centric warfare, all these require digital technologies capabilities as cyber and space warfare. And it is in these areas where, our strengths in the country, our strengths in the industry, as well as in the startup, is today starting to fit. You made a point of private sector having not been able to make so much of an impact. And what I would like to say is that if you look at what our efforts have been in the last year, especially after the Atmanirbhar Bharat announcements have been made, we have, in the new defense acquisition procedure in the country, we have created several things which will create greater opportunities for private sector. One of them is, we have today started funding private sector for development of new technologies. Under both make what we call, and I don't want to go into details, but we have started funding private sector, private industry in technologies. The second thing is, for the first time this year, we have decided that we will earmark a certain portion of our budget for procurement from private sector. Now, this is important because we have done two different things. One, we have said that we will procure, we have earmarked part of our budget, and that this year it's 64% of budget, practically 2/3 of our budget is earmarked for domestic procurement. And the second part is out of the total procurement, 15% of the budget is being earmarked for private industry procurement this year. So for the first time, there is a commitment from the government. Yes, if I have today about 1,15,000 crores for my budget, about 17,000-18,000 crores will be from domestic industry.
Sir, you spoke about two important things: the role of startups, technology. India is one of the largest software developers, and if you go in the next for the next 5 to 10 years, even Prime Minister is talking about how the emphasis has to be on artificial intelligence, how the emphasis has to be on getting digitally and strong, as well as cyber, prepare for a cyber warfare. Is that the new focus for the government, because that's the strength which India already has? And how do we bring it into the mainstream and marry it with the hardware which the industry normally is relies on?
Yeah, so the point is, first thing is to be able to, we had, as you rightly said, we have this strength. So first thing is, how do we marry this strength with actual capability in defense? And that is something on which our first focus is. How do we leverage the strengths in our IT industry? How do we leverage the strengths in our startups? And in 2018, we, like I said, for the first time, we introduced startups to defense under what we call as the IDEX program. And the results have been quite remarkable. Let me give you a couple of examples. There is a startup in IIT Delhi who we have tasked to develop a 100-megapixel camera, which enables you to see, precisely from a drone or from satellites, etc. We were in the past procuring this camera typically at the cost, about 10 to 15 crores per camera. From Israel or US. This startup has actually developed this camera at a total cost. The government has been about 1.5 crores. I believe the total cost has been to the tune of about 10 crores. And in about 12 months' time, we've been able to be used for defense purposes. So, and the cost is going to be about one fraction of what cost we used to pay for the imported camera. More thing is, they are able to gigapixel camera from 100 MB to now going to gigapixel, another scale multiplier of 10 times. Which kind of technology is only available in US and maybe one or two other countries? I'm not aware of that. That's the kind of ability, and all in a short time at a short cost. Today, let me give you another example. There is another startup who is working in the swarm area of swarm technologies. We came to know about the startup because the US lab, equivalent of our own DRDO, came and approached us, and they said they wanted to collaborate with us. Now, this is something which is unheard of, that US is coming to India and seeking collaboration in matters of leading technology. And of course, what I'm sharing with you is something which happened a couple of years back. We started working with them, with that startup, and some of you who are following this, during the last Army Day, there was a demonstration of swarm technology on the Army Day, which showed how swarms can be used in the country. And this is something where new areas capabilities are existing. So we first of all created a platform by which startups were able to actually work along with the armed forces, understand their requirements, and actually create solutions for which was not there. And this is what IDEX did. The second thing which we have done is to be able to further make it meaningful is that we, in our defense procurement procedure, which we had, there was no provision by which we could have procured from startups. It had, as usual in very often government procurements, we had provisions which only required, major eligibility conditions, so much of turnover, so much of past experience, etc.
Positive net worth, etc. and all.
In the defense amendments that we made in 2020 in the defense acquisition procedure, today there is something which allows procurement from startup as per the procedure laid down there. And the third thing which we have done in this year's budget, in 2021-22 budget, is that we have earmarked 1,000 crore rupees in the budget for procurements, only for procurements from the startup. So today we have, on one side, we have enabled startups to work with our armed forces. Second side, we have created procedures and rules to enable it. And third, we have provided funding support. That's something which has been positively, seen. And I am just giving you a couple of examples. I can take scores of examples where every time you see startups coming out with amazing stuff.
So I agree with you on the part that, you see a lot of innovation coming in at the lower level of MSMEs, where they do a lot of research, or at least they aim to do it with the help of the government agencies. But biggest problem which these startups and MSMEs face, once you have developed the product, there has to be orders placed to them so they can sustain that. These startups cannot independently go to the global market and sell their stuff, because they will get, they will not be even seen because there are bigger players in that market there. But how do we plan to ensure that they can scale it? I understand you have said 1,000 crores for startups and others, but is that enough to scale it up and give them sustained orders so that they survive and they can thrive and scale it, become a good big companies going forward?
I think so. This year, you are absolutely right. We were faced with the same question, and in discussion with startups, we have created this earmarking of budget this year. And now this problem is, today startups are excited about this. And now this gives them a window by which they can actually offer products. And I'm sure that moving forward, based on the experience of this year, we can always see what more needs to be done.
One more thing which you spoke about was, some of the orders, earmarked only for the domestic industry. We saw last year, the Raksha Mantri and the Prime Minister talk about the negative list of 101 items which will be produced solely in India and by the Indian companies. If you speak to the industry, they will say that many of these products have already been produced in India. So is there a way to expand this negative list to increase much more high-tech items into it? They also progress with respect to, providing that kind of technology. Today, our industry does not, go into tech unless they get an order. So they don't have a visibility to or incentive to go and spend R&D on high-tech innovation. They see an order coming in on the way.
So, first of all, I want to say that it's very important to recognize that, like I said, even with a big budget, we are among the top 5 in the world in the budget. We only are going to contribute a small fraction of the actual market that exists, and industry knows that, understands that to be really sustainable on an ongoing basis, we need to go out and look globally. That's how the countries which have major defense industries, that's how they do. We are about $15 billion a year. The whole market is $500 billion a year. So it's a small fraction. So we need to look global. The second point is that, the negative list, it's a very interesting question. Now, if I say that this item will not be procured, and suppose it's not imported, but an industry does not have the capability to manufacture it. then we are at some level telling the forces that your preparedness should not be where it should be, because they, I suppose for some reason the industry is not able to manufacture it as per the indicated timeline. At the same time, if industry does not know what we need, they cannot actually go and prepare for it. So this is the very important question. And this is where the calibration takes place in consultation with industry, that what are the items that lead to the negative list. Clear cases are those where the capability exists in the industry, and therefore those should be negative list. Now I must tell you, this list is also very important, because in the past, even though the industry had the capability within the country, there are many cases, and I don't want to name them, but in the past there was this tendency to go and import even those cases. So now this is put to rest, that if the industry has capability. The second part of this is where industry does not have capability, but is showing significant promise that yes, in the next 1, 2, 3 years, they will be able to acquire capability. And that's a question of assessment. There are several items been put on negative list with effect from 22, 23, 24, etc. So these are the items where today industry does not have the capability, but in our projection, we think that industry would be able to. Now, third point I want to say, is this a complete list? I don't think this is a complete list. We need to continuously work, in defense, like they say, to procure thousands of items. And this is just a list of 101 items. So as we go along, more lists and then more items. But this is the broad approach that we follow, where clear ability exists, where it will be a negative list. Where industry shows promise and capability in the next few years, those can be put in negative list. There is no clear visibility whether industry would be able to do it. Those take it for further consideration in future.
Sir, how do you see the role of MSMEs and small and medium enterprises for the defense sector? We have seen some of the most developed defense countries, today France or Germany or any other country, they have some little stand which are basically clusters of SMEs supplying and creating the ecosystem for their respective defense industry. We have not been able to do that effectively in India. We do have a high number of MS assisting companies, but we are not able to organize them and put them into a cluster, give full push to them.
So I would like to say that MSMEs are the backbone of defense industry, and our effort is, and I would like to slightly have a different view on this, that if I were to say where is the industry capability exists today, I spoke about 75,000 crores of domestic production, and I spoke about nearly 50% of value addition being done in India. This capability is largely in the MSMEs in India. Today, all the defense PSUs have a big network of MSMEs which are supporting them to do their production. We have about 8,000 active MSMEs in this industry today. And our effort, like I said, because if we have to grow the defense industry, the MSME supply chain has to increase. And therefore, our effort is to increase this number from 8,000 to 16,000. So there is no question that MSMEs need to be continuously taken forward as we go along. And this is happening. Now, second thing is, I also want to share with you, I earlier mentioned very briefly that in the last few years, and why I stopped at 2019 and 20 is because last year being a COVID year, we saw a little plateauing. But in 3 years, we saw 800% growth in defense exports. Where did the growth come from? In fact, 90% of the growth actually came from MSMEs in this country. Today, I mean, if we were to see, we have MSME in Bangalore, which is producing parts for small arms, and they have nearly 50 to 60% of the global market. Today, we have at least about 50 to 100 MSMEs who are part of the global supply chains of global OEMs, whether it is Lockheed Martin or Boeing or Airbus or Dassault. So Today, our MSMEs are really taking advantage of the opportunities, and I think as the defense industry size overall grows, there will be many more opportunities for our MSMEs in this sector. By the way, in our own procurement procedures, there are certain reservations which apply. So small procurements, and I'm forgetting the actual number, it's about, any procurement of 50 or 100 crores, which may be small by defense size, but may not be so small in other ministries, is actually reserved for procurement only from MSMEs, and we still strictly adhere to that.
So there's no denying the fact that we have come a long way as far as defense procurement is concerned in the last 5 to 7 years. How defense procurement used to happen earlier, it used to take years and years. Now it's been the speed has gone up very fast. And so from that point of view, I just wanted to ask you this thing. We are open to getting FDI into the Indian defense sector. The government has already announced that 74% FDI is allowed in defense sector there, but we are not able to get that defense companies to come and set up in India. Why is that that we are not able to get big investments? So if you look at since till June 2020, I think in your answer to Lok Sabha, we were told around 3,000 odd crores have come in as FDI in defense and aerospace. We are not able to attract that much of defense expenditure or investment into building capabilities in India. Where are we stuck? Why are we not able to attract that kind of investment if India is one of the largest importer of arms and equipment?
Yeah, so defense, you must appreciate, and I think everyone will appreciate, is a unique industry, and that is why it needs a treatment which is different from any other industry. Being a monopoly and government being the only buyer, anyone who comes and makes an investment first looks for an order. So even so, we have done two new things today which will enable this now. One is we have created opportunities for foreign investment to come in by allowing 74% FDI on automatic route and 100% on simple permission. The second thing what we have done is today, and which was not allowed earlier, we have said that, look, if a foreign company, let's say a Boeing, comes to India and sets up its own subsidiary, which produces, that would be treated at par with an Indian company producing this. Now, this provision was not there. Now, let me also further clarify. This has to be distinguished. So there are large number of cases where this requirement will enable, let us say, if we are buying something, an aircraft, which is for which we do not have technology today. And Boeing says, today we are importing from US because that advanced aircraft is not being made in India. And we do not see in the next 10 to 20 years, possibly, or 10 years or so, the capability to develop that aircraft. Today, under these provisions, now we can ask Boeing that please make this in India. You don't have to transfer, because there is reluctance to transfer technology in that regard. So therefore, in the past, it was not possible. Now, we don't need that transfer of technology. They can themselves come and set up shop here and start doing this. So that framework is now being created. The second thing is that now the question is, does this mean that this will apply in all cases? Now, this is particular provision will be, procurement is there for those cases where we do not have indigenous technology. If there is indigenous technology capability, we do not then want foreign company to, because in the end, the dependence on the foreign company continues, we need to take cognizance of. So in case there is a item for which we have Indian companies with technology, where we do not propose to adopt this system where we are inviting foreign OEMs. So therefore, given level playing field to foreign OEMs in those cases where the technology does not exist in the country, will enable them today to start making big investments, as you said, in FDI. Otherwise, since we were not able to give them orders if they made in India, therefore they were not willing to put. Now with this, we will be able to give them orders, and therefore they will be able to put up these investments.
how is the domestic defense PSU segment shaping up, sir? You know, there's a lot of talk about corporatization the ordnance factories. There are many defense related companies under the administrative control of defense ministry which have now listed. You know, where are we on that? How are we streamlining that segment? And do you see more companies from the defense ministry administration coming and listing on the exchanges and doing a value unlocking for the government?
So defense PSU system is the backbone of today's defense industry, or at least what has been inherited by us. We are taking two major initiatives. One is and we are trying to make sure that we strengthen this base that we have today. To strengthen this base, two steps are being taken. One is increase the productivity and efficiency of our defense PSUs. And as part of that, you have seen, second thing is also that we are encouraging them to create their own technologies. In the past, these were largely manufacturing factories. But over the years, they have created huge capability sets within them. We started a program called Mission Raksha Gyan Shakti. Basically, it was a new initiative, change for them, where we encourage that in your own work processes, related to your work processes, you look at where new innovations can be done to further enhance whatever you are doing. And I am happy to say that in the very first year, nearly 1,000 patents were filed by these defense PSUs. This is stark because several of them had not even filed one in the last 50 or 60 years of their existence. So this was a new world for them. And today, I don't know if you saw recently, I was reading the newspaper that, for example, one of the defense PSUs in collaboration with a startup in IIT Madras has created an unmanned ground vehicle. We heard of unmanned aerial vehicles a lot, but big vehicle which is unmanned and can maneuver various things. So today there is no order from either the army or they have just this product, and then this will create to innovate and create new products and offer new technologies. Second part I want to say is, if you were to look and track the way these people these changes have had very positive impact. I mean, I don't want to talk about share prices as being a good indicator of performance or give that impression, but if we were to look at their share prices in the last year or so, all these share prices have doing significantly well. In terms of turnover also, which we track continuously, they have been doing very well and the turnover has been increasing. All of them today in their performance metrics are required to do two things. One is sell outside of defense. Second, sell outside the country, the export story which I mentioned earlier. So we are encouraging them to look out, compete in the market. And for example, BEML today, nearly 80% of its market is outside defense. Even OFB has been encouraged to start doing more defense. And just to cite an example, they got an order from US, and which was good. But the more interesting they got after some time, couple of months, they've got a repeat order. Now, I always give much more value on the repeat order because it shows that the buyer is happy with your product and your price and is willing to come back to you. One of our shipyards is today, they had done a ship for Norway. And today, Norway has given them to make an unmanned vessel for freight on a nomination basis. That's without going to tender. Norway comes, and this is a situation where a foreign company is coming and telling our shipyard, why don't you do this on a nomination basis? And these are very good signs that today outsiders are coming and telling our defense PSUs. I think this trend needs to continue. This is the new addition to their portfolio of whatever they were doing. And this needs to expand going forward. And I think that will create much bigger opportunities, more opportunities. Second part is, of course, corporatization of OFD you mentioned. I think that's something which will add tremendous amount of strength to OFD. OFD, if you look back in the history of hundreds of years old organization, was world leading organization for defense products, defense items. And today, we are in a situation where, it's a government department, does not have a balance sheet, the overheads are very high, and there are concerns raised sometimes about its performance. And corporatization would address these systems in a manner that it will enable them to be actually assess what needs to be done correct and bring them at par with other defense PSUs in the country.
Sir, I'll have one more question before I open it up for questions from all the, all the other, people who are viewing our session. My final question is on the strategic partnership program. That was one of the ambitious program of this government, where they wanted private sector to come in into strategic partnership with the government, and then create the entire value system right from system integrator to the last mile, where they're purchasing from small SMB, MSP, others. And now we have I think at least two programs where we have already have the intention has already been done. The shortlisting has already been one of the programs, which is on P75, which is for submarines. Where are we on that entire strategic partnership? And do you think that it's a little slower in taking it off, or is it the normal process? Because almost 2 years and the shortlisting has happened, but the RFP has not come in.
Yeah, so the first thing is, yes, I think the process had is taking a little bit of time, and that's also because this is a very unique process. I don't think such process has taken place anywhere in the country. But before that, I must tell you that yes, we are going ahead, and with the strategic partnership, there is no looking back. It's a very important form of Atmanirbhar Bharat, and you will see the first RFP very shortly. I'll tell you where the some time was taken is basically because, as you are aware, it is a program where we have identified Indian industry partners through one set of processes. We have identified foreign OEMs who are the major technology holders of that particular platform through a separate RFP. And now a legal framework has to be created, which will ensure that each of the partners will honor their commitment with the buyer, that is the government. And typically, in all our standard contracts talk of two-way, it's a bilateral arrangement which exists between the buyer and the seller. Here we have three parties, so there are actually contracts between the three parties bilaterally, and there is common contracts between them. So this becomes a four-way contract. The contract between the industry partner and the OEM and Government of India, the industry partner and Government of India, and what exists between all three of them. And this legal framework, since there were no existing legal agreements that there had to be formulated, and we are supported by consultants to help us to draft those agreements, have now all been put in place. And like I said, you will see the RFP coming out very shortly.
So, when do we see that? Because you're on record saying that by December 2020, the RFP should be out, but now we're in April.
I think, as far as I know, I think all the formalities have been completed, so it's only a matter of now, any time it could come.
And this will require vetting through the DAC, I'm not wrong?
Okay, that's right.
So will it be coming in the April DAC or the subsequent DAC?
It's difficult for me to say whether it's coming in April DAC or the next DAC, but it is, from all the preparations required for the purpose have been completed. Let me put it like this.
Is it safe to say that by the end of this calendar year, we will have the RFPs out?
100%.
Sir, I have a question from Yashwant. He says, his question is, how can we increase R&D in businesses in the defense sector, which helps businesses to improve their products?
Say that again.
How can we increase R&D in businesses in defense sector, which helps businesses to improve their products? Basically, he's saying that how can we use the R&D which is there in the defense for mass production so that it brings down the unit cost of that as well?
And that's a very good question. I must say, see, and I spoke about export as being one of the global models for developing defense industry. The second important model which world over countries followed is that defense tech has then been, suitably, maybe one level, lower level, or with some suitable modifications is used to create products and technologies which can therefore give huge commercial leverage to the companies who are in these technologies. In Japan, for example, you particularly see all the defense companies today, 90% or more of their product comes from commercial products, but 5 to 10% of the work, which is on defense area, is actually giving them the technology to bring out those commercial products. And I think that model industry should do. As far as encouraging the industry to be able to do this, development of R&D, two major programs we have. One is the Make One program, where we are giving direct assistance to industry. There was a big limitation in this that the process was elaborate and took time and could not be concluded. Recently, about a month back, Cabinet has taken a decision where this has been totally decentralized now at commanders level, at service headquarters, and also at official level in the government. You can actually, give grants to the industry under the Make procedure. The second is the Make Two procedure, which has taken off very successfully, and there are a number of examples where we are assuring an order. So we say you can make your own investment, and we will give you an assured order of whatever quantities that are there. This today we have over 40 different products today in different stages of procurement, and several of them are now today in the contracting stage as well. So these are
I have few more questions which are strategic in nature. So I'll ask you, and I don't know how much you will be able to answer. This is from Narendra Aluri. He says India has historically maintained its stance as a non-aligned country. Developments like Quad Summit and increasing strategic bonding between India and USA, can we conclude that it is inclining towards USA-led defense strategy?
India stands for its values. And what are the values that India stands for? We stand for free, open, inclusive, rule-based order. So, today the world is become, it's a multipolar world. It's different from the world when we had the Cold War, we had, Campy and the non-aligned world. It's a multipolar world, and our focus is to work with partners based on issues. And this, accordingly, we have relationship with many countries. We have very good relationship with US. We have very good relationship with Russia. We have very good relationship with France, and so on and so forth. So I think we have to recognize that in this multipolar world, our approach is that we will deal based on principles and issues.
There's another question coming on strategy, which is here. What are the measures India has been taking to counter-attack China's string of pearls targeted strategy?
Say that again.
What is the kind of measures India taking to counter China's string of pearls strategy?
So, I think that's a very good question again, and I must, compliment the questioner again. See, the war that's another, new form of strategic warfare that goes on. It's not only about, the traditional conventional way of fighting where you went and fought border. And it is in this respect, you have to have, strategies of working with partners, whether it is in the ASEAN, whether it is in the Indian Ocean region, and in other parts of the world. So, I would say my answer is again the same, but the point I think you have to recognize the fact, and it is not possible as you would possibly appreciate for me to share everything here, but it is important to recognize that today's interventions are much beyond mere conventional warfare. These could be economic in nature. These could be political in nature. These could be information related warfare in nature, and you have to be able to address these issues in all the fronts from where they come.
There's another question coming from Nafila. She is asking, how can exporting defense assets enable in strengthening India's defense system, except for the inflow of money? Are there restrictions on export of particular items?
Oh, I thought I answered this, but that's you see. Suppose if I am, today, if I or a country is dependent on particular technology or defense platforms from country B, and once you have a platform, you need it for continuously maintaining that platform, to do the upgrades, to be able to make sure. So countries A's defense preparedness gets intricately linked to countries B providing necessary support for doing so, and that is where the long-term association and integration happens between the two countries.
Mm-hmm. Sir, another question is coming from Parth Chaudhary. If you had to choose the one biggest change that has happened in our defense ecosystem in the recent past, what would it be?
I think, I would say we need to leverage the strength in a country is our people. And I'm talking a little philosophically now. So, and people in terms of industry is reflected by all the industry and startups, everyone else together. We cannot limit our capability to the people who, at some point of time, people like me who come into, let's say, public sector and take the decisions. If we open up this ability, and this has been shown in several sectors, whether it is IT or, today in the world of vaccination, I mean, in the terms of a fight against COVID, I mean, I can list out a number of these things where if you open it out to the abilities of our people, which is our strength, then I think we would be as good as anywhere else in the world, if not better. And that is why, if I were to make one change, I mean, I had listed 4 in the beginning, but if I were to make one change, I think we should open up.
Sir, there are a lot of strategy questions here, and I think we're going to have a lot of leaders coming out of SRCC on strategy. The other question is coming is, could you comment upon the evolving role of defense framework in the India's Act East policy?
Yeah, I mean, you see, because today what is also happening is that, marine security is becoming an increasingly important component of our own defense preparedness. And, when we look at East, we have the whole, the Indian Ocean region, the ASEAN, and all those countries who are connected to us through the Indian Ocean. And therefore, also because a huge fraction of the global traffic, sea traffic, actually passes through this area. And given our strong economic, social, and cultural ties with these countries in the past, I think Act East policy has a huge implication in our overall defense preparedness.
There's another one coming from Akshat, I'm going to paraphrase it. How is India going to balance between US and Russia?
I think it's not a question of balancing. We have good relations with both these countries, and we are working with them, like I mentioned earlier, based on our, based on our principles and issues.
Sir, there is one question which is coming from an academic point of view from Pankaj Pandey. His question is, what are the government's plan to benefit young minds in the technology institutions like IITs and NITs?
The startup program is a big way to, to come and work in defense sector. We are also encouraging, IITs, NITs, and other institutions in a country to create defense-specific courses within their own curriculum. Because I think as defense technologies grow in importance in the coming time, it is very important that these institutions also start, creating defense-specific courses. We have global universities who do this, but I think going forward we will see more. And there are several universities who have started doing this already. And I think going forward, we will see this happen more and more.
There's one from Pratham Maheshwari. Does vaccine diplomacy have any role in developing the defense in relations of India?
I think vaccine diplomacy has shown one thing, that India can be a globally important player in the coming days. And by the way, I also want to mention that we are supporting several countries have approached several armed forces of several countries have approached us for vaccines, and wherever possible, we are responding positively to them.
There are few more questions which is there. One is on, I don't know whether you will be able to answer this. This is coming from Narendra Aluri. He's saying that there's news that countries like Vietnam, UAE, and Saudi Arabia are interested in procuring BrahMos cruise missile from India. When will the deals materialize? I'm not sure whether you'll be able to answer.
I think these are not questions which I would be able to give any answer at this stage.
Yes, I thought so, sir. I thought, let me just put it across to you in case you want to take it. Okay, there are still questions coming. So I have one more question for you, which is the role of private sectors. Do you think the Indian Indian private defense sector is mature enough to handle big orders?
I am absolutely sure that Indian private sector can do it. This question has come to me several times when I used to be making electronics industry created. Those days we had practically, everything in electronics industry had wound up. I remember factories like Sony had actually wound up their operations in India and gone to Vietnam or somewhere in the ASEAN. And when we started saying, we said, can India be a manufacturing hub? And I don't want to say this, but today, India is the second largest producer of mobile phone in the world. On all various electronics equipment, there is tremendous amount of positivity about its growth. I'll give you one more example. Look at how Bajaj has happened. See the story of Bajaj and Vespa. When we were all students, I remember the biggest aspiration used to be to own a Vespa student, or those days Bajaj Chetak had come, and it used to be a big deal to own a Bajaj Chetak scooter, which was all based on foreign technology. And today, you have the largest two-wheeler producer in the country without any technology support from anywhere in the world. If you can do it, and you can talk. I'm not even talking of IT, because that is always stated as a a strong story of success. So, my point is, we have done it in many sectors. I think what is important is we have to learn to the vaccine itself. Today we have, where were we when last year around the same time when the whole crisis came? We didn't have ventilators, we didn't have, and I must also say this, that created ventilators in a matter of 2 weeks. Important regard, which is also related, because one is we have to have trust in our own people and system and industry, and that's why I want to say I have absolutely full trust. Second is, I think we have to, which is also related to trust, is to ease the regulatory process. And again, I would talk about this ventilator example. Even when I was in electronics, I used to talk of medical devices industry being, a big opportunity. But the regulatory framework did not enable it to grow out of its own. One of the things which has happened is that the regulatory framework has now become much more industry friendly. And like they say, rest is history. So this company Scanray in Mysore was exporting ventilators to some 8 or 9 countries even then, but they were not approved to sell it in India. And the regulatory approvals came through, and thereafter, of course, there were the issues of some components which were not available due to COVID time, which Bell and they collectively were able to indigenize. And like I said, in a few weeks' time, they were able to create a fully indigenous ventilator. So I think there is nothing that we cannot do. It's not that we want to do everything. In a global system, we will continue to depend on certain things on a global supply chain. But I am absolutely sure that if we were to have more trust and reduce the regulatory burden, our industry would be able to do it.
Sir, the government introduced the PLI scheme in many sectors, right? Pharma, mobiles, semiconductors. Do you think that something similar can be done for the domestic private sector defense industry as well?
I think surely. I think but like I said, being a monopoly, The biggest thing here is order, and things like negative list is a great, assurance of an order coming from the industry that yes, these items will not be bought from outside. Earmarking budget is a great indication that this much budget will now be available for domestic industry. And then, of course, the industry also has to start globally. It's a difficult industry in terms of, you have to, like I said, even in other countries, it is only the government and they'll have to go and work with government. So normal market principles may not always apply in defense. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Dr. Kumar, it's been an hour you have given us today. Thank you very much for joining us on this discussion of Shriram Economic Summit. With that, I hand over to Hardik to take it forward.
Thank you, sir. I must admit, sir, that the last 60 minutes have been extremely engrossing. Our understanding of the nuances of the Indian defense sector have enhanced. And for this, we once again thank Ajay, sir, for taking out time out of his busy schedule and gracing us with his presence and thoughts. We thank the company, sir, and hopefully we get to see you soon again, hopefully on campus. Thank you once again, sir.